welcome to or back to my channel. My name is Ellie and I'm a knitwear designer. I've been knitting for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, and I have never purchased a pattern or used a pattern to create any of my knitwear. So I wanted to make this video today to share with you my design process and how I go about creating everything that I do, from being able to see a picture or see something in a store or just out in the wild, and being able to take that and use that as inspiration or even recreate it. And yeah, let's just get into it. I have my notes. I've got all of the things that I need. The first thing that I do when I'm designing is obviously pick what I'm gonna make. So that might be a cardigan, a sweater, a shirt, a tank top, shorts, a skirt. There's so many things that you can make, which is awesome. After you've decided what you're gonna make, you're gonna then pick out inspo. You're going to pick out elements that you would like to include in it. And there is so much, there's so much that you can tailor to exactly what you want. So it's kind of fun. I love this part. I've written a bunch down. So you're obviously going to pick the sizing, you're going to pick the seam, where the seams are going to hit. Is it going to be a raglan, a drop shoulder? Is it going to be saddle shoulder? You're going to pick what kind of ribbing you want, the length of the ribbing. You're going to pick the sleeve shape, the body shape. Do you want to do body shaping? Do you want it to be more rounded or slimmer? Do you want it to taper in at the bottom? You're going to pick how long you want it to be, the crop. You might want shorter sleeves, or maybe you want your sleeves to be, to go to your fingertips, which some people like longer sleeves, some people like shorter sleeves. You're going to decide if the neckline is going to be a V-neck, the shape of the V-neck. You're going to decide if it's a tight circle, or a crew neck. There we go. That's the word. And you're going to decide what yarn you're going to use. Let's see, if the neck increase stitch is going to be close to the neckline or farther away, because that creates a slight difference. And you're going to decide the color, if you want to do color work, if you want to do stranded, intarsia, stripes. There are so many different things that you can include, and that is a really fun, I think, part of the design process. Then if you don't know exactly how to do something, if you can narrow down that element, if you can figure out what it's called, then you can go and you can find a specific tutorial for that specific element. So a lot of my learning has been done through tutorials, but very, very specific ones, like how to knit a rolled neckline, how to do broken ribbing, how to increase on double knitting, or how to double knit in general. I had to learn that. Once you get those elements narrowed down, you can actually go and find tutorials for basically anything you need, and that is pretty much how I've learned to do almost everything that I have done. So one of the top places that I find inspiration is Pinterest, and we're gonna go through some examples. Say you're scrolling through Pinterest and you see a picture, and let's see, I'm gonna pull it up on my computer and I'm gonna post the picture here. Let's say you see this sweater. This is a Sonia sweater by Petite Knit. This is a picture that I had screenshot, I had it in my screenshot folder for years, I think 2 years, because I love how this looks. You can't see all the design elements, but this is a pretty simple example that I used to create my own gray sweater based off of this. So for example, we're gonna see that this is a drop shoulder. The shoulders hit right here, the seam for the sleeves, I mean. It's flat, there's probably some sort of seaming at the top. Let's see, the neck ribbing looks to be a 1x1, and also for the body ribbing, that is 1x1 rib, and then the neckline is a folded neckline, And the sleeves seem to be pretty slim, but this does seem to be a fairly oversized fit. So all of these things would be things that I would, you know, take into account if I were going to try to recreate this. The knitting gauge, it looks maybe like it would end up being like a worsted weight, like a size maybe 7 or 8 needle size. I don't know. I think I've heard that petite knit uses smaller needles, so I'm not 100% sure on, you know, gauging all of that, but it does look to be kind of like a larger knitting gauge. So the sweater might be a little bit thicker or heavier, and that's going to achieve that kind of like that. It looks almost like heavy, I don't know, and that's like part of the vibe of it. It looks very cozy and soft. The yarn, you can see, has like a really nice halo, and so there's probably mohair going on in there, and yeah, all of these things are things that I would kind of track. If I wanted to recreate this exactly, then yeah, you're going to want to look at like the yarn that you see in the picture and try to figure out if there's like mohair or not. Alright, this next one, we've got a child's cardigan, but you know, I think this would be really cute or fun to wear and make myself, especially with different, maybe a more muted color palette or something more closer to what I like, but the primary colors are actually, I think, really fun. We can't really see the sleeves, or the cuffs of the sleeve, but let's just say that they match the body ribbing. Let's start with color. So obviously this is color work. It looks like we've got a 2x2 stripe going on, so you're going to knit 2 rows and then switch colors for the next 2 rows. This is obviously a cardigan, so the button band is, the picture is actually quite blurry, but it could switch to garter stitch for that button band, but the rest is stockinette. The ribbing is interesting. It looks like a stockinette folded neckline, but then the body ribbing is a 2x2 rib and then switches to stockinette at the bottom to give it that rolled effect. The sleeves, again, this is a drop shoulder sweater, and yeah, since there's no body to compare it to, and this is obviously a kid's sweater, the size would be relative to whatever you wanted to make it. It could be oversized, it could be more fitted. That would be a measurement that you would take. It is probably, again, it's drop shoulder. You could knit this top down and join in the round to finish it. And yeah, it does look like the sleeves are sewn together, but I would probably just knit that in the round. And yeah. Alright, this last one is actually fairly similar to the Sonia sweater, but I just kind of wanted to point it out because, again, this is just something that I would see scrolling through Pinterest, and I did see scrolling through Pinterest, and it was really, I don't know, I love the color so much, and I just love how cozy and nice this looks, and the color is amazing. So I'm just going to talk quickly about how I would recreate this. So first off, color's amazing. There could be mohair in with the yarn. I'm not quite sure. It looks fuzzy, but at the same time, like a good wool will also kind of give off that halo. The interesting thing about this one is that's different from the Sonia sweater is that the ribbing is, I believe, broken rib. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it is very neat looking and it looks amazing. The neckline is not a folded neckline, and again, I think it's that 1x1 broken rib, and same with the sleeve cuffs, but the thing that I really like about this one is the ribbing is so long. The sleeves, the ribbing on the sleeves is probably like a good, I don't know, like 6 inches almost. Same with the body. So it looks like it could really, I don't know, it looks really flattering and nice, and obviously it looks great in this picture, but yeah. Again, like an oversized fit. I do have a type. I have a very obviously sweater type that I like. But yeah. All of these are also crew necks, which I should have picked like a V-neck sweater to show you. But that's kind of like the process that I would be thinking through when I see a picture on Pinterest being like, oh, this looks like a cool V-neck, or this looks like a really nice oversized sweater that I would love to make, or this cardigan looks amazing. So that's kind of like the inspo gathering process. Next, I would probably, I don't always do this, but I do kind of like to draw it out and include some of those elements. So I have a design notebook, and I just keep all of my notes, what I want to make, and kind of like the just like aspects, the elements. I like write down specific elements that I want to include in each project. So I'm going to put that away. I'm going to kind of show you. As you can see, I've kind of drawn it out, and then I write next to it what I want to include. So these are future ones. I have a better, let's see. Alright, my fall knitting plans, I actually completed pretty much everything. I did change up a few things, but for instance, I did a navy blue collared drop shoulder. I wanted to include stockinette, I wanted to include a double knitted collar, and I wanted it to be cropped and long sleeves. So I went from this drawing and I created this. Sorry, it's so dark and it's probably hard to see, but I created this sweater, and it's got the collar, and I had a double knitted band here, and it was cropped with long sleeves. And so I went from a picture on Pinterest to drawing it out and including those elements and then knitting it up. Next up, if you're doing color work, I highly recommend doing color work. If you're going to do stranded color work or intarsia, I highly recommend going to Stitch Fiddle, the website, and getting a free account. There we go. Because it is a very helpful tool. I will show you maybe a screenshot up here of just stuff that I've created using that. That is one very helpful resource. There's no affiliate or anything. This is just a great resource, but you can use colors. They have even yarn brands so that you can get like a very exact color that they can provide, and you can use that to create all your color work, and you create your own grids and all your own charts, and that is super helpful. Next place that I would really recommend getting all your color work, or getting color work inspiration, getting charts, is Pinterest again. There's a ton of references, there's a ton of color work charts. I'll post some up here that I've used personally, and I actually really love it. There's usually like a picture of what it's gonna look like, and yeah, it's really nice for easy on hand. You can just search like flower or floral colorwork chart or dinosaur colorwork chart, or I don't know. There's actually so many Scandinavian colorwork charts and just everything there, and so that is a great resource. Of course, there's also books. I have checked out a few books from the library, and there are always some really interesting and fun ideas in there. Library is always a great resource if you haven't thought of that. The next step after you've designed your sweater and you're ready to go and you're ready to knit a swatch is to get the measurements. And so the swatch is going to come in super handy for this. You're going to have your needle and your yarn that you've picked out, and you're going to measure based off of this swatch to get the measurements that you want. That is one half of the equation. The next is you're going to measure yourself or a sweater that you like or something and pick the measurements that you want to reach. So you're going to get your gauge, and I have this yarn that I'm going to be using, and for the sake of ease, we're going to say that this gauge that they have printed here is going to be absolutely correct. For this gauge, it says for a size 6 needle, or 4mm needle, it's going to be about 24 stitches to get 4 inches. And I just realized this, I don't really pay attention to the height gauge. This one doesn't even have one printed, so that's probably important. It's never really impacted me, I don't know. And I might mentally just do that anyway, or as I'm working with it, kind of figure that out. But anyway, that's kind of more important to know how much yarn you need, but I always buy more than I need. And once you make a lot of sweaters, you will kind of figure out for what weight, how much yardage or meters you need of the yarn. The next measurement that you're going to take is your own measurement. I have like my own trusted measurements that I use for literally almost every sweater because I just really like the fit that creates. And so for me, if I typically do drop shoulder sweaters. So if you're doing a drop shoulder, you're going to measure from where you want the seam of the sleeve to the other seam of the sleeve, and that will always be kind of down here. So it creates an oversized fit. That for me is usually about 21 to 22 inches across, which gets me to about here. An easier way to do this, if you're not sure where you want that to hit, is to actually just use a sweater that you really like, or a shirt, or you can use a sweatshirt. The important thing is that it just fits the way that you want it to, and you can create any garment that will fit that if you can use the measurement equation that I use. So this is one of my favorite sweaters that I've made, and I would love to... Sorry, it's dark again, so I hope you can see it. But it fits super well, and I really love the oversizedness of it, and it's really warm. So I'm going to show you how to get the measurement from this, if I can. Usually you would lay it flat, but I'm not going to move the camera, so I'm going to show you with it held up to me. So I'm going to take a measurement from this shoulder seam to this shoulder seam, and wow, 22 inches. So I really do love that measurement, I guess. Based off of whatever measurement you get, you're going to grab your calculator or do the mental math if you want, but you're going to calculate the width or the length. It's the width of the sweater, but the length of your shoulders. So you're going to use that measurement. I'm going to put in 22. I'm going to multiply that by the stitches in the gauge, which was 24. That's 24 stitches for 4 inches. That gives me 528 stitches, and then we're going to divide that by 4, those 4 inches, and that would mean I would cast on 132 stitches. Now, you will want to take into account what kind of yarn you're using, because, you know, the wool will bloom. It'll stretch when it's blocked. It will grow a little bit. So maybe if you want it to not grow as much, you would take that into account. And that's really helpful if when you swatch, you will block the swatch to see how much it will grow, and you can use that in your equation. Acrylic yarn will not grow as much. It kind of depends. If it's a larger stitch, if you're using a larger needle, then it will probably grow just a little bit more or relax. But if you're using smaller needles, then it will not grow as much. That's usually the first measurement that I use to get started because I get really excited to cast on. a drop shoulder top-down sweater pattern, I always start with the back panel and then I knit the front and then join in the round. And I'm going to show you how I do that. So you cast on the length, or you cast on however many stitches you got from your equation, and you can start to knit. Then you will decide how far you want the back panel to go, because it will end at the bottom of the sleeve. This is where you will join, this is the point that you'll join in the round, and so that will be the bottom of the sleeve. I go about 7.5 inches for me, because that gives me enough where it hits like right here, and it's not too bulky underneath, but it is not even close to like being right up in my armpit. I cannot stand it when things are touching my armpit, so that gives me plenty of space, and it also gives you space for wearing long sleeve shirts and other items underneath your sweater, which is super nice. That measurement will change depending on your own size. That will depend on kind of what you want your fit to be. If you want it to be a tighter fit, then you would knit a shorter back panel. If you want it to be even larger, then you would knit a longer back panel. So that is something that you can decide as well. When I was first figuring out what I really wanted, I, just kind of knit and went with it. But if you want to decide that beforehand, you would measure from where the back panel would start, and then you would go and just measure that. That's again where a gauge swatch would help, and where the gauge info would be helpful as well, because you would see how many rows you would need to get there. I just knit and I make it to it, and honestly for me, the more space underneath the sleeve the better, so I'm not incredibly particular about that. But anyway, after your back panel has been knitted and you've made it to the bottom, you're going to join in the round. I put all of those stitches on a stitch holder. I typically just take a yarn needle with some extra scrap yarn, and I just weave it, or I don't know, I put the stitches on that yarn, and I always end on a row where you're going to be knitting and not purling, and you put those on hold, and then you can pick up the stitches for the front. So the front is where you're going to do all of your neck shaping, and I calculate, this is where a lot of elements are going to come into play right now. So if you've decided how wide your neckline, if you want like a really tight neckline, this is very tight. I want it to be a super high up crew neck. I don't want it to stretch out, so I made it very small. That meant that I calculated a little over a third of the stitches, and I picked those up here to begin knitting the front panel. And this is where being able to read knitting is very helpful. So if I were to see a picture, and I would kind of be able to tell, like, oh, that's a very high up crew neck, or it's a deeper V, and you can kind of look and see where those increases are happening. So I knitted flat of just the picked up stitches for about 13 rows here. If you can see, that's the flat section, and then I started doing increases. And I increased on every knitting row, so I wasn't increasing on the purling rows, for about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I increased 8 times, so I did 16 rows. That's 8 increases on the knitting row, and by that time that was that was as far as I was gonna go. Because what you're gonna do is put that section on stitch holders as well. So you just have this curved part, and then you are gonna pick up on the other side. So you're gonna do the exact same thing on the other side, just on the flipped side. So I picked up the same amount of stitches and I knitted the same amount of rows, and I did 8 increases on the knitting row. Then on a purl row, on the purl row here, I purled all the way across, and then I cast on the rest of the stitches to reach the length of the back panel, if that makes sense. So if I have, let's say I have 100 stitches on this length, and I pick up 30 stitches on each side. If I increase 10 times on each side, that would be, so we have 60 for the picked up sides, then we have increases of 10 stitches on each side, so that's 20. So that would be 80 stitches. If I need to get to 100, I am going to cast on 20 stitches as I come back, and that connects the full front panel. And I really hope that makes sense. If not, please leave a comment. I will literally do like whatever it takes to make sure that this is understandable. Yeah, I just want to be really thorough and make sure that you understand. Then once that is connected, you will knit all the way. You'll do stockinette back and forth all the way to the bottom of the sleeve, and that's when you can join in the round, and you'll put all the stitches together and you can knit in the round all the way down to the bottom. So when I do a drop shoulder, I actually always add extra stitches underneath the arms, because that gives more of like a rounded shape to it, and I think just a nicer looking shape to the sweater. So I will probably, when I put all the stitches back on the needle to start knitting in the round, whenever I hit the end, I will, the end of one panel to go to the sleeve, I will cast on a certain amount, usually probably like 6 stitches. Depends on how extra you want that space, but it doesn't need to be too big. And then I will pick up the same stitches for the other side of the undersleeve, and then the beginning of the round for me always is right here on this front corner underneath the sleeve, and that's where every round begins. Then from there, the measurements are a little bit easier, because you will just kind of be going, you just have to knit to the destination that you want. You can make it as long or as short as you want, and if you've decided on how big the ribbing or how long the ribbing is going to be, then you can kind of subtract that from the length to know when to start that ribbing. So if you decide, for instance, I want 2 inches of ribbing, but I want the overall sweater to be, let's just say, 22 inches long, and I want 2 inches of ribbing, then I'm going to start ribbing at 20 inches. The sleeve is a very similar concept, I would say. You kind of just decide how long you want it, and you decide how long the ribbing should be, and then you knit to that length. Sleeves are fun though, because you get to decrease if you choose to. Some design elements for sleeves are just the size and, what's the word? Like if you want it to be like a balloon sleeve, or if you want it to be more tapered, I prefer a more tapered fit, so that if you can see here, I have pretty steady decreases going throughout the entire sleeve so that it ends at a tapered fit. The same thing goes for this navy blue one that I did. In fact, I think I did the exact same. Sorry if you can't see that. the exact same thing, and for this other one, yeah, this one is much less of a decrease. So for me, for a good decrease rate to get that tapered fit is you decrease every, if you're knitting in the round, I decrease on one side, I alternate the sides that I decrease on every single time so that the line stays in the middle, and then I decrease every fifth row on each side. So I'll decrease on the right side, and then I'll knit probably about 3 rounds and decrease on the left side, and then from there I use that as my guide. So when I knit 5 rows and it's the turn for the right side, then I will decrease, and then when it's the left side's turn, I will count 5 rows from there, if that makes sense. Let me see if I can show you from this sleeve. Here are my decreases, if you can see that. I decrease here and here and here and here, and that gives a nice tapered edge. If you were to want more of a balloon sleeve, you would decrease much less. You would probably knit a straight sleeve, and then you would do a rapid round of decreases at the wrist to tighten that up, and then knit the ribbing from there. And yeah, those are kind of some design elements. So that's how I use measurements to kind of create the exact fit and shape that I want. Now, if you're gonna add stripes or anything into the mix, that is not very hard to do. You can decide your striping. All right, I hope I haven't missed anything. This is just like the basic rundown of how I go from like idea to finished concept. Of course, there's always blocking afterwards, but the measurement portion I find is probably the most important for getting that right fit. If you have any questions, please let me know. I can make a follow-up video. I can go through, like, I can draw it out. I can do, yeah, whatever it takes essentially for this to be understandable, and I can go more into depth into anything that you might have further questions about. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to talk about designing. I would love to publish my own patterns, but size grading is a little scary, but at the same time, using like the gauge and the measurements is not so, I don't know. It's a little more attainable, I guess. And so if I were to create patterns, I would probably do what I know some other people do, is where you put in your measurements and it uses the gauge to give you the equation, to give you the number of stitches to cast on and whatnot. But I hope this helps. I hope you can create your own dream patterns, and you can see the stuff on Pinterest and you can make it yourself, and that truly is, I don't know, you can literally make anything you want when you know how to get those measurements and like pick out those design elements that you want. And so yeah, happy knitting. Please let me know what you've knit, what you've created, and if you've used this to help you design anything. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.